This is the tombstone of Ulie Berger, the architect and master builder of Saint-Nicaise here in Reims. He's holding a model of the church, and around him are the implements he used in overseeing its construction: a measuring stick, a pair of calipers, and a square. These were just about the only tools a medieval builder like our Guillaume de Senlis would have had to supervise the building of a structure like this. What he lacked in technology, the medieval builder had to make up in ingenuity and personal skill. Not only did he have to be able to read and write, but he also needed a keen understanding of applied geometry, substantial knowledge of the existing buildings of his time, and as if this weren't enough, he also had to be able to manage the multitude of workers required for such an undertaking. There were as many as 50 individual sculptors working at Amiens, and considerably more than that here at Reims. The organization and planning must have been nothing less than incredible. The most important craftsmen were the stonemasons. They were divided into the rough masons who cut, mortared, and laid the heavy stone, and the freemasons who carved and laid the more intricate stonework, such as the ribbing, the tracery, and all the ornamentation. All the masons served a long and rigorous apprenticeship. They were highly organized and mobile, traveling from town to town wherever there was work. Now under the masons served the quarrymen, the mortar mixers, and the carriers, which often included oxen. Those animals were considered so important here at Lons, by the way, that they were immortalized in stone in the towers. None of the menial laborers were treated as well as the masons, and none were paid much for their work, particularly the oxen. At one cathedral whose records still survive, workers began in the summer before 5 a.m. and continued on until 7 or 8 in the evening, a 14 or 15-hour day, with a half hour for breakfast, 1.5 hours for lunch and a short nap, they must have needed it by then, and a half hour for a late afternoon snack. In the winter, the people who managed not to be laid off only worked a 9-hour day. Around every cathedral, virtually all labor was skilled, to some degree, as well as professional and organized. There's the story of the cult of the carts from Chartres, where noble citizens were supposed to have hitched themselves to wagons to help transport building materials. It's very romantic and very moving, but very doubtful. Many other tales have come down to us about amateurs so inspired by the undertaking that they were willing to work for free. In fact, there's an epic song of the period about a pious local man who worked entirely for love, who wouldn't accept any money for his labors. The other workers killed him. And there's plenty of opportunity for that at a place like this. Money for the construction project was handled by the cathedral's chapter. Here at Amiens, the chapter house actually adjoins the cathedral. The chapter hired the master builder, dispensed the payroll, kept the records, and bought materials. They appointed one of their own to be custos fabricae, or keeper of the fabric, to personally administer all these tasks and to keep the tons of supplies and materials flowing to the builders. Clearly, the most important material was stone, and chapters generally bought or started their own quarries. It was extremely difficult and expensive carting stone, so quarries were located as close to the worksite as was possible. Another crucial and expensive item was timber, especially the long, heavy beams required for the roof. But by the end of the 13th century, there weren't many trees left in northern France that could meet these requirements, so most of the wood had to be shipped in from other countries. Many of the building trades are proudly displayed in the stained glass and carvings. All in all, building a cathedral was a tremendously expensive, time-consuming, and intricate process. In fact, it still is. Forty-three individual trades are represented in the stained glass at Chartres, showing not only the integration of secular and religious life in the Middle Ages, but the tremendous pride in craftsmanship that had its prime showcase in the cathedral.
The election of Friar Roland as the new bishop is most welcome. No one has forgotten his service to the poor and the lepers. But what his grace faces is formidable. And who could be surprised after what happened under Bishop Gervais? For many months, each meeting at the chapter was an exercise in frustration. Until one day...
My Lord Canons, I have the most wondrous news to relate.
Merchant Thibault, this is highly irregular.
I beg your forgiveness, but I must tell you, while it is still fresh in my mind, just this morning, Bishop Roland told me of St. Francis of Assisi and his miraculous way with animals. Later, as I was walking through the woods north of the town, all at once, I was blinded by a great light. When I recovered my senses, I could not believe it, but there could be no doubt. My eyes beheld a vision of the Blessed Virgin, clothed in the sacred veil of Beaulieu. Upon her finger rested a small bird, which she bade fly to me. The bird lit upon my finger and spoke to me, just as to St. Francis. It told me that my great prosperity in business has conformed to a heavenly plan. My Lord Canons, I am instructed by the Blessed Virgin herself to give my fortune over to the cathedral.
Saints be praised.
Word of the miracle spread quickly, and so did its results. And Merchant Thibault retired to the service of the Franciscan hostel as a lay brother. But through his gift, the faith of the people was restored. Pledges began anew. Soon, Master Robert was overseeing a new army of workers. The damaged walls were shored up with better stone, and the debris from the fallen bays was cleared away. The nave was completed, and the splendid towers begun. Robert is most confident now, and has even begun the casting of 4 bronze bells at the Beaulieu foundry.
It is a delicate process, Your Grace. The craftsman first must make a clay and plaster model, which is then covered with a layer of wax, the desired thickness of the finished bell. The mold is covered with additional clay and plaster and heated over a fire. The melted wax runs out and leaves a cavity into which the molten bronze is poured. When the metal cools, the mold is destroyed and the bell is smoothed and tuned.
I cannot wait to hear it. Day by day, the towers rise before our eyes. The town is prospering. We are blessed with a fine bishop. We have much to be thankful for.
It is with deepest respect that I, Ansel, take quill in hand to assume the task of our brother Pierre, who departed this earth on the 4th day of September in the year of our Lord, 1267. He dedicated himself to this chronicle for more than 50 years. I hope I can prove a worthy successor. Progress has been inspiring these past years. It is thrilling to know I will see the completion of this great church, just as it must have been to see its beginning. I most enjoyed watching the carpenters finish building the great spire. It is a frame of wood covered tightly with sheets of lead, then splendidly decorated. The wind is terrifying and the height dizzying, but the view is well worth the fright. I confess to lingering more than once to gaze at the heavenly sunsets. Inside the cathedral, stonecutters and sculptors completed mouldings and capitals, while skilled masons created a maze on the floor of the nave. Finding one's way to the centre is certainly worthy of God's blessing, signifying as it does the pilgrimage journey of the pious. They came from far and wide for the dedication. My heart sang out, for I knew that the great cathedral of Beaulieu, a beacon for all the children of God, was now, at long last, complete.